it all clear, though her memory of the accident that caused her death remains vague. She muses that perhaps she lacked good karma, as she cannot expect to receive much affection from her parents in this life. The father's voice echoes, accusing the mother of trying to pass off her lover's child as his own. Her mother looks at her with disdain, calling the baby with no hair creepy and demanding she not look at her. The baby is struggling. Is she bald? And as a girl, what does her head even look like? She considers her mother, speculating that she must be suffering from postpartum depression. The mother calls the child cursed, blaming her for the husband's accusations of cheating and noting how eerie it is that the baby shows no emotion. The infant looks on silently. Despite having memories of a past life, she is still just a baby who might be bald, as her mother instructs the maid, Mary, to take care of her. Mary approaches the crib, announcing cheerfully that it is time to clean the baby's bottom, a moment the infant recognizes is coming. With a simple word, Mary announces that the child is all clean. The infant marvels at the magic of this world, the gross feeling on her bottom vanishing instantly, a phenomenon she finds amazing no matter how many times she sees it. This realization brings a jolt of excitement. If magic exists, then she should be able to use it too. She tries to speak but can only make baby noises, which the maid misinterprets as simple babbling. As she lies in her crib, she wonders what kind of magic she might learn in this different world. The hallway outside her room is dark and quiet. Suddenly, she finds it difficult to breathe, a suffocating feeling enveloping her. Her mother's sharp face looms over her. The baby's cries pierce the night, surprising Mary, who notes that it is rare for her to cry like this. Mary rushes into the room and screams for the madam as she sees her over the crib. The mother sneers that the child can cry after all, sounding like a dying animal, while Mary struggles to pull her away, crying for help. The father bursts in, demanding to know what is happening. The mother, in a frenzy, screams that the cursed child must die. He finds his wife collapsed on the floor, wailing, with the maid cowering nearby. The man watches the scene in silence. He turns to the maid, Mary, and calmly instructs her to take the child to a church or somewhere similar. Mary pants as she carries the baby away. She rushes onward, muttering that the Nazith Merchant Guild must not find out about this. Her instructions were clear. Do not let anyone see you. The baby, held tightly in Mary's arms, understands with a sinking feeling that she is being abandoned. Mary tearfully apologizes to the child as they arrive at a large, gated building. The baby watches as Mary runs away through a graveyard, leaving her behind. Snow begins to fall from the dark sky. As the snow comes down, the infant feels she is done for. Roughly 30 minutes pass with no one coming by. The cold becomes unbearable, and she realizes with terror that she is going to die at only 5 months old in her third life. She wails, screaming at a god she isn't sure exists, frustrated that she doesn't even know her own name in this life, having only been called that child. She lies alone among the gravestones as the snow continues to fall. A voice in the distance remarks that they can hear a baby crying. A woman named Marissa insists that there's a baby, but her companion is skeptical, pointing out they are in a graveyard on a graveyard. Her strength is fading. She feels herself reaching her limit. A feeling of warmth she wonders if she is alive. Rain jokes that she was confused about eating. Joe agrees to Marissa scolds him for touching her head like that. He inspects the baby face on her head, remarking that it is hard to tell but it might be blonde. The woman wonders what they should name the child, since there is no name on her clothes, and asks Joe for suggestions before proposing the name of the child. Joe agrees it is a real name from Mary and Scarlet, and asks her new parents smile down at her, welcoming Mary-chan to her new mommy and daddy after 5 months of being yelled at and nearly dying. Overcome with
Let's do this then! Take this! Thunderclap!
Lolly, eat Papa! Overruled!
Yes, you are.
Finish this fast!
Let's finish this next time.
Resolving to repay the Spark couple for their kindness, the life of Miriana Spark, with a mental age of 30, begins as she sets out to help a young girl named Millie raises her arms in determination, announcing the start of Operation Repay the Favor, and vowing to make the Nico tea in a booming success. Her first task is clear as she looks upon a dirty room, noting the grime, mold, and stains that plague the establishment. She knows she must take care of this filth, but a sudden jolt of awareness strikes her. Terror fills her eyes. She wakes up with a gasp, realizing the previous moments were just a dream, but the grim reality of the dirty room remains unchanged. With a gulp, she reaffirms her resolve to take care of the problem as soon as possible. As she eats, she decides to start by cleaning up, but wonders how a child like her is supposed to get rid of such deep-seated stains. She reflects on the world's poor hygiene standards, which are rough.
All right, let's finish this fast! Knock him down!
Interrupts her thoughts, remarking on how
That was quick!
her father warns her not to show her blonde hair is attention.
That was quick!
Watch this!
Put up a good fight.
Here!
Show no mercy! Laid bare!
Let's finish this next time. Let's finish this next time.
Though she couldn't use it as a baby, she wonders if she can now. While her parents work in the kitchen, she tries to use magic, but nothing happens, leaving her to wonder why the others can use it so easily. Her parents tell her to behave and stay in her room, and she wishes them good luck with their work, still determined to find a way. Deciding to explore while her parents are busy, she searches the living space on the 4th floor for any books or leads on how to use magic. She opens drawers and closets, rummaging through their contents. After a thorough search, she finds nothing that stands out, concluding it will not be that easy. While cleaning up, she considers asking her parents for help but dismisses the idea, not wanting to bother them, before her eyes fall upon a sturdy-looking box. She opens the box and finds a necklace and a ring inside, along with something else. It is a legitimate-looking book on magic, and she excitedly sees a section on how to cast light. As she reads, she wonders how she is able to understand the text, guessing it must be a perk of being reincarnated, and humorously misinterprets the light spell as something that summons a light bulb. Skimming through the book, she learns that magic is activated by visualizing desire to awaken the magic power within. She focuses, ready to try. Her mind immediately drifts to her past life's obsession with food, intensely desiring a new convenience store dessert collaboration and other pre-ordered sweets. To her surprise, her body begins to glow, and she realizes she has successfully activated her magic power. The light quickly fades, but she can feel a new energy in the center of her body. With newfound confidence, she believes she can now cast a spell. She chants the word for light. A small orb of light appears in her hand, and she celebrates her first successful act of magic. She practices again, finding the glowing orb mysterious and not hot to the touch, and discovers she can make the tiny light bulb move. Casting the spell repeatedly, she feels like a real magician and finds the process fun, but then a strange feeling washes over her. Her mother's voice calls her name, waking her up and questioning why she is sleeping on the floor and took out a book without permission. Waking up confused, Millie is scolded for messing with expensive books and realizes she must have passed out from magic power depletion after casting only 5 small light spells, a pitifully small amount. The next morning, she practices the light spell again. She recalls feeling sick after the 5th spell yesterday, but today she feels fine. She feels the magic power inside her has grown and speculates that daily practice might increase her capacity. 1 week later, her father leaves for the day, and her mother heads upstairs to check on Millie. Her mother walks down the hall towards her room. She opens the door and calls for Millie, finding her collapsed on the floor again. Holding the sleeping child, her mother is scared, hoping it is not some kind of illness. Millie wakes up later, realizing she was caught passing out from magic depletion again and resolves to be more careful not to worry her parents, noting that her power has increased enough to cast 10 light spells now. She decides to keep practicing secretly every day, working hard to learn different spells for the sake of her family. Several months later, she stands ready, having made significant progress. She has learned to cast spells for all the basic elements: water, earth, fire, and wind. She feels confident, having mastered all the fundamental elemental spells of this world. The magic book explained that using multiple spells is rare. Everyone has a limit to how much magic they can hold, which is why people use the clean spell sparingly. She concludes that her ability to use all elements must be another perk of reincarnation and decides to keep it a secret so people don't think she is strange. Downstairs in the inn, her parents are busy serving the few customers they have. Seeing that her parents are occupied running around on the first floor during meals, Millie decides that now is her chance to act. She prepares to cast moving through the air stealthily, she casts clean on the windows and hallways, making sure not to get caught. She continues casting the spell on the dusty furniture and bedding, feeling a little overwhelmed by the effort. Her father, working nearby, is caught in the magical cleaning wave. As she finishes the last spot with a final clean, her mother arrives with her lunch. Her mother stops in the doorway, stunned, asking if the room was always this shiny and noticing the hallway is spotless too. She asks Millie if she cleaned up, and Millie sheepishly admits to doing a little bit, thanking her for the food. Her mother praises her, saying it must have been tough and thanks her for helping, while privately thinking that not even an adult could clean such a large area so quickly, remarking that it's almost like magic. Millie reflects that while many reincarnated people become heroes or saints, she just wants to live a fun life with this family, and her quest to repay their favor has only just begun. A young girl sits down to a bowl of stew, ready to eat. Millie tastes the soup and finds it bland. While not bad, eating the same flavor every day has become boring. Now that she has cleaned the shop and made it look nice, she feels a strong desire to do something about the food as well. She worries what her parents would think if she used her past life's cooking skills, just as she worried about them discovering she had secretly learned magic. She considers at least telling them about her cleaning magic so that she might be able to help out more openly. Her mother suddenly calls her, asking Millie to come to the backyard for a moment. Her mother notes that Millie's hair has grown long and is a rare blonde color, and that it's time for her to play outside more. With a smile, she holds up a brush and a bucket filled with a dark liquid. Millie asks what is happening, and her mother tells her to hold still for a while. The girl nervously agrees. As her mother applies the greenish, powdery liquid, Millie worries that the dye might make her hair look too fancy. After some time, her mother announces that she is all done and that this should be fine now. Millie is delighted to see her hair is now a nice reddish-brown color, and her mother tells her they will start greeting the neighbors tomorrow. The next day arrives. Millie is introduced to Mike from the pharmacy next door and the shy Nina from the oil shop. She meets the neighborhood kids, introducing herself and feeling overjoyed to have made her first friends. When asked if she likes sweets, Millie enthusiastically says she loves them. Mike declares that since
Ad
they are friends
Astra
now, he will
Abyssosk.
take her to a special
Welcome
place.
to the
They
Adventurers
arrive
Guild.
at a forest filled with apple trees, and Millie is amazed by
Thank
the sheer
you for
number of
completing
apples.
today's commission.
Mike explains that while apples cost 5 small copper coins each in town,
Ad
anyone can
Astra
pick them
Aby-
here for free, though Nina adds that she only comes with adults because the forest is dangerous. Millie recalls a lesson from her father, Joe, about the local currency, which ranges from iron coins worth 10 yen to gold coins worth 1 million yen. Based on that conversion, she is shocked to realize a single apple costs the equivalent of 500 yen. Thrilled by the deal of getting expensive apples for free, Mike proposes a contest to see who can pick the most. As she picks the fruit, Millie wonders if she can even eat them all and remembers something from her old life. She recalls a memory of suggesting making apple chips, only to be told that baking juicy apples would just make them soggy. Filled with inspiration, she tells her father that the key to cooking is not being afraid to fail. She had been hesitant to share knowledge from her past life, not wanting her new family to think she was weird. But her frustration with the repetitive daily meals of milk soup and vegetable soup, combined with not having a single snack since reincarnating, pushed her to act. She decides she doesn't like hiding things from her kind parents and resolves to give her idea a try, believing they wouldn't freak out over something like this. And so, she makes a decision. As her father reaches for the basket of apples, she tells him to wait. She casts the clean spell on the fruit. Her parents are stunned, asking how she can use magic. Millie explains that she practiced and learned on her own while they were working. Her mother has a flash of realization, connecting Millie's magic to why the room was so clean before, and Millie confirms it without mentioning she cast a spell over a wide area. Her father is amazed that she learned magic on her own at such a young age without being taught. He tearfully asks if she is a genius, and her mother remembers seeing her read a magic book, prompting Millie to think they are acting like overly proud parents. Her parents caution her not to overuse magic and run out of mana because she is still only 4 years old, and Millie fondly thinks that while they are a bit clueless, she really likes them. Now that the cleaning is done and she can be her true self with her family, she is ready to proceed. With her family's help, she begins making apple chips by slicing the apples thin and baking them carefully in the oven until they are crispy. The finished chips smell good, and her parents wonder if they will be tasty as they prepare to try them. Her father takes the first bite. He declares them delicious, finding their crispy texture addictive. He turns to Millie and asks if the apple chips are just as she imagined they would be. Millie takes a bite and is overwhelmed by the sweetness, the first real snack she's had in this life. She gives her father an enthusiastic thumbs up, telling him they are amazing, much to his confusion. Her father suggests they try serving the apple chips to customers, and her mother agrees it's a good idea to offer them tomorrow. The next day comes. A customer is offered the new apple chips. The customer finds them crispy and delicious.
Well, here comes another.
Get to work! You two! Time! Overruled!
This was new.
She exclaims that there's pork in this world too, but her father corrects her, stating that delicious orc meat is on the menu. She drops her fork in shock. Realizing she is eating orc, she stares blankly as her father tells her not to waste it and to eat before it gets cold. Her mind flashes to the image of a bipedal, pig-like monster from the game. The realization that she just ate a bipedal pig brings her to tears, confusing her parents. Despite her shock, she acknowledges how tasty the meat is and decides she must eat it with her. She has complicated feelings about the situation, as the orc meat is just too delicious. An idea begins to form. If there is pork in the orc meat is removed, then that means she can make a certain dish. An image of a pork appears in Millie's mind, crispy on the outside and juicy on the inside. She imagines the flavor of the meat spreading through her body when she takes a bite. To her, it is a devilishly delicious gourmet food. Presenting her idea to her family, she suggests that putting meat in the can make something delicious and could become a new menu item. Her father, Joe, is hesitant, questioning the idea of putting meat in wasting ingredients.
Ooh, shiny.
Having the courage to not fear failure, and her mother agrees.
So pretty.
They should try it since the apple chips were also delicious. A pot of oil is placed on the stove.
Let's fly! Mora makes a lot of problems go away. So you can never have too much Mora, huh?
They gather
I'm a
all the
little out of
necessary
practice these days.
pork, meat, bread,
Any conflicts around?
Millie is
I'm in the mood. Take me up!
flour and seasonings, and she confidently tells her worried Season it with salt and spices, and then coat it with flour. Next, she dips the meat into beaten eggs, which shocks her father, who it crumbs and coats the entire beholds a bottle about putting the meat in so much oil and brown to ensure it cooks, tells her father to take. While he was unsure, Millie takes a bite herself. She declares that something is missing and this isn't what tonkatsu should be, which confuses her father, who thinks it tastes fine. She critiques her own work, feeling the meat isn't juicy enough and the texture is weak, suggesting that frying it twice might make it crispier. With renewed determination, while he thinks it's good enough to be a new menu item already, he quietly agrees. Millie's eyes are filled with thanks him, and through a series of failed prototypes, meat art. As Millie begins to lose her to answer that it's him that, and that they shouldn't come true, she declares that she is going to make, beginning with finding the perfect thickness for the meat, perfect balance for a satisfying bite, testing the oil temperature. With her test the temperature by crumbs are spreading too fast, meaning the heat is. Joe begins to get the hang of maintaining the perfect heat. For the third, dry the bread. They then that will trap the meat recently bought, taking Joe also making the right cooking utensils, chopsticks experiments. They also learn that fish oil is far too stinky for the recipe. The long days of but after tons of on the big reveal, aroma smell. Guy's special or them comments on the jaggedly as the customers take in praise, exclaiming how crunchy, chewy, and juicy it is, and how the sweetness of the meat comes out the more they chew, immediately asking for more. The family watches from the kitchen with relief and joy. They celebrate with a high five, ecstatic that they did it. As customers order more, Millie is overjoyed, realizing that the popular orkkatsu will definitely bring in more people to the restaurant. The next week, her father brings her breakfast in the morning. A loud noise from outside interrupts their meal, and her father decides to go check it out. Marissa wonders what the noise is, and Joe returns with a look of panic, exclaiming that it's a disaster. Millie and her mother rush to see what happened. They are greeted by the sight of a massive crowd of customers gathered outside their inn. A massive crowd swarms the entrance of the inn, creating a chaotic scene. The family stares out at the sea of people, wondering what is happening. In the crowd, adventurers discuss how word of the inn's legendary orc dishes spread among them in just a week, leading to the massive line. Millie turns to her stunned parents. She declares that this is the Nicotiai's big chance and rallies them to keep the business sense. Her father agrees that adding them as daily specials is a great idea and asks where she comes up with the recipes, to which she replies they just pop into her head.
Watch this!
Let's finish this fast!
Stick around!
That was quick! Open fire!
Forget it!
Open fire!
Then!
Open fire! Open fire! Bullseye! Bullseye!
She asks what his name, and he introduces himself as Zach. She introduces herself as Marianne, but says he can call her Millie. He knows she is small but has it together. Zach affectionately calls her Millie-chan, thinking she is cute, and Millie asks about his silent companion. The cloaked figure just stares back at her silently. Zach apologizes and introduces his party member, Will, explaining that he is a recent, unsociable addition. Zach says he will rest until dinner and heads upstairs with Will, while Millie remarks on what a lively person he is. Later, at dinner, Zach is blown away by how delicious the orkkatsu is. He exclaims how delicious it is, and Millie is glad he thinks so, while Will eats in silence. Zach notes that for someone so young, Millie is remarkably sharp and speaks well. Millie proudly replies that her level of knowledge is just what a proper lady should have. She reflects that common folk in this world are usually rough, so her polite Japanese service standards make her seem noble, though she feels she might have gotten a little carried away. Zach pays for their 2 meals, which cost 8 small copper coins each, using larger copper coins and asking for change. Millie provides the correct change, mentally calculating that 1 copper coin is worth 10 small coppers, as Will watches her intently. As they head to their room, Zach comments that the meal was rare and tasty. Will tells Zach that something feels off, noting how the cheap inn is unusually clean and that Millie is remarkably smart for her age. He grows agitated, exclaiming that something is not right with the child, as her advanced speech and calculations are
Gaining
out of
some
place for a
altitude
4
can bring
or
some
5-year-old
perspective.
in a room like this. Zack calmly tells him to calm down, admitting she is unusually smart but seeing no reason for alarm. He calls Will's complaints rude, especially since Millie is so cute, but Will retorts that Zack is always too optimistic. Will sits down to write a report as Zack asks if it's another one for that guy. Zack teasingly remarks that climbing the ranks must be tough for him, addressing him as William. Zack complains that William's boss puts him through the ringer, having him pose as an adventurer to gather intel before deciding to go to bed. William writes his report, stating that the town seems fine with nothing unusual to mention. He continues, writing that he is currently staying at the inn everyone is talking about. The report adds that there do not seem to be any major problems with the establishment. However, he adds one thing to note as a precautionary measure: the presence of a strange child. The report is delivered to a grand door, where the courier announces his presence. A butler brings tea to a figure reading the report, which details that the child's behavior and calculations felt too clever and off. The report identifies the child's name as Miriana, with the nickname Millie. The figure reading the report muses that an unusual child is definitely something worth keeping an eye on. A variety of delicious-looking dishes are laid out on a table. A young girl named Millie feels emotional as she finally gets used to her new life in another world, having had her father Joe make all her favorite dishes to help their inn, the Nikoti, thrive. Her family wishes her a happy birthday, and she thanks them, announcing she is now 5 years old. She is given a cute, ornate ribbon as a present. Her mother remarks that the ribbon suits her well, while Millie reflects that since she was found in the winter at 5 months old, her birthday is celebrated in the summer according to this world's seasonal customs. Wearing her new ribbon, she joins her parents, Joe and Marissa, as they all prepare to eat the birthday feast before it gets cold. As they eat, her father clears his throat, preparing to make an announcement. He tells a surprised Millie that at the beginning of next year, she is going to become a big sister. Joe and Marissa smile together, confirming the happy news. Millie realizes what this means and offers her parents heartfelt congratulations. Inwardly, she is overjoyed by the wonderful news. She playfully wonders when her parents found the time for romance, but dismisses the thought as rude, concluding that their happiness as a couple is what's most important. As she leaves the inn, she thinks to herself that this is the best birthday she has ever had. Joe decides they will need to hire someone so Marissa can avoid heavy lifting, and Millie, excited for her future sibling, vows to work even harder to help out. A few days later, Millie returns home. She proudly shows her father the 25 apples she picked, having won her usual apple-picking competition against her friend Mike. She considers bringing apple chips to Mike's dad, Gordon, as thanks for taking her, but then gets a better idea. She presents a freshly baked apple pie, noting that the sweetness of the apples
I'm
is
a little out
perfect
of
even
practice
without
these
sugar.
days.
Her father is amazed at how great the
Any
pie
conflicts
tastes,
around?
and Millie, pleased
I'm in the
with
mood for some
How about
peacemaking.
this? Take fire in the hole! Take me up! Locked on! Locked on! Locked on! Let's have some fun! Open fire! Open fire!
and asks what he is doing. She explains that she came to deliver a pie made from the apples they picked yesterday, and reassures him concerned whether the adults were present during their trip to the forest. Will questions why she didn't just buy apples from a nearby shop. His comment leaves her momentarily speechless. She explains that a single apple costs 5 small copper coins. It will take her 3 weeks to save for with her weekly allowance of 2 small coppers, making the 25 apples she picked worth 63 weeks of her allowance. Stunned by her impassioned explanation, Will apologizes, admitting he understands her allowance is small. As a voice off-screen blames Will for the situation, Millie shouts that her allowance is not small. A charming man appears, apologizing to the little miss, and explaining that Will is a bit off sometimes. Millie is immediately struck by the handsome and refreshing-looking newcomer, wondering if he is a friend of Will's. He introduces himself as Leo, Will's co-worker, and Millie introduces herself in return, finding it hard to believe their adventures because they seem so refined. As an apology for Will's rude behavior, Leo says he has something for Millie-chan. He holds out a small package, offering it to her. As she takes it, she recognizes a distinct smell. She is overcome with joy, realizing with excitement that they have chocolate in this world too. Leo is surprised she knows about chocolate, explaining it's so rare that even people in the capital are unaware of it, but Millie claims she heard about it from a merchant guest. Curious to see what kind of sweets she will make, Leo asks if he can tag along. Back at the inn, Millie announces she will use the chocolate Leo gave her to make stones. As everyone gathers excitedly, she reminds them all to wash their hands, deciding it's not a good idea to use her cleaning magic in front of others. Her special spoon making begins as declaring with a scary expression that the rest are for her family. Her parents scold her for being rude to their guests as a comical squabble breaks out over the remaining in registration. Some stuff happened. Marissa enters and reveals the truth. The head of the commercial guild is her grandfather, and they are estranged after having a falling out. Millie is left completely shocked by this revelation. The scene shifts to the exterior of the commercial guild headquarters. Inside, an employee concludes his monthly report on registered recipes to the guild head. As he leaves, the employee casually mentions that a once unpopular inn and restaurant has recently become famous for its delicious food. The guild head recognizes the name of the inn, Nicotii. He erupts in a silent rage, crushing the report in his hands. With a dark expression, Marissa's grandfather vows in a restaurant kitchen.
Take this! Following thunder!
Knock him down.
Suffer the wrath of the...
Millie looks down with a sad expression, remaining silent as her father refuses to elaborate. Sometime later, while Millie is sweeping the storefront, a man approaches the door saying that they are not open for business yet. Ignoring the notice, the man pushes inside, declaring that he is not a customer but has come specifically to see the owner of the establishment, prompting Joe to ask who he is. The man stands with his arms crossed, introducing himself as the owner of a rival establishment called Joe looks at him with an expression of relief. The scene shifts to the interior of a quiet restaurant before opening hours. Joe serves the man a drink at one of the tables, thinking to himself that this man is also a business owner and feeling an immediate sense of that he has come to
Fulfill our pact! Transfixed! Witness my rise!
Joe listens as the man explains that his own restaurant, Manpudia, is struggling while Nicotii has been thriving, and he admits his jealousy. The man leans forward, asking if Joe can't just help him out a little bit, a request that makes Millie, who is listening nearby, gasp. Joe firmly states that he has no intention of giving away the recipe for their best-selling item, so the man offers 3 copper coins for it, insisting he isn't asking for it for free. Millie is internally outraged, thinking about how insulting it is to offer only 3 copper coins for Nicotii's hard-earned, top-selling dish after so brazenly asking for the recipe. She recalls a previous conversation where Will had estimated the recipe's value at least 5 copper coins and is left wondering what the old man could possibly be thinking with such a lowball offer. Visibly upset, Millie clutches her father's shirt and begins to address the owner of Manpukutii. Joe
Well, well, if it isn't the Traveler. It's been a while for sure. Didn't expect to see you and not cry. Oh, if only. Not Cry's even more lawless than I could have imagined. How should I put it? Well, that's just it. This place is quite literally a lawless land. Even if I was hired to provide legal assistance, I suspect it'd all devolve into everyone resorting to the Final Defense Manifesto to air their grievances. Ta-da! Here's your answer. The most direct method of self-defense. Okay, enough of that. The reason I came to Nod Cry is to gather material for the new legal guidebook I'm co-authoring with Shinobu. The book's theme centers on the borders of law, and one of its chapters is about what happens when law and order completely breaks down. There's no way I'd be able to get an accurate picture of that back in Liyue. So here I am, this infamous land of lawlessness. As soon as I stepped into Not Cry, I knew I was in the right place. It's not like the law here has broken down. It's more like it never existed at all. And, unsurprisingly, I haven't run into a single person in my line of work. Being a legal consultant here is probably an easy way to starve. Hey, don't worry. I've got Adeptus blood, remember? Ordinary bandits can't even scratch me. In fact, I'm kind of waiting for someone to come and accost me. Then I can drag them aside and interview them on how they survive in such a hostile place. Ah! Yeah, you have no idea. I spent so long convincing her to let me leave. I'm sure my horns grew out a little. Why, yes, we talked it through. I definitely did. Yes? Yeah, yes, yeah. Granny just loves me to bits, you know, and we spoke for ages. Anyway, I'd love to stay and chat, but I've got an appointment with, the Curatorium of Secrets, that's it. So, without further ado, I'll be getting a move on. See you! Bye!
Joe steps in front of her, facing the man directly and declaring that the recipe is a treasure to his family of a formal recipe registration system. Holding a freshly prepared plate of orkatsu, Millie swallows nervously and hardens her resolve, realizing she must do whatever it takes to protect this recipe. A quiet moment passes as the camera focuses on the exterior of the Nikodii restaurant. With a sudden burst of energy, Millie shouts that the situation calls for an emergency family meeting. The scene fades to black for a moment, transitioning to the next part of the day. Later, Millie passionately argues that they must register their recipes, even if going to the commercial guild is something they've been avoiding. When Millie asks about the payment structure for registered recipes, Joe explains that businesses must pay an annual usage fee, which leads Millie to angrily conclude that the Manpakudii owner was trying to get their recipe for a one-time payment of 3 coppers to avoid the yearly fee. Marissa expresses her happiness that Joe called the recipe a treasure, and they all discuss the possibility that if someone else were to copy their recipe and register it first, Nikodii would be forced to pay usage fees to the thief instead. The thought horrifies Millie, who tearfully exclaims that she doesn't want anyone to steal the special dish that she and her father worked on together. Joe softly agrees with her, affirming that it is indeed the important recipe that Millie herself came up with. With a sigh of resignation, Joe concedes they have no choice but to commit to going to the guild, and Marissa laughs, agreeing that it can't be helped, even if her father told them never to show their faces there again. Seizing the moment, Millie asks her father why he cut ties with her maternal grandfather, the guildmaster. Joe begins to explain, revealing that both he and Marissa had already severed ties with their respective families long before they purchased Nikodii. He specifies that this estrangement extends to Marissa's grandfather, the former president of the asking why their relationships with their families deteriorated, and Joe acknowledges that it was a topic he knew they would have to discuss eventually. Before telling the story, he looks at Millie with sincere affection, reassuring her that no matter what he says next, she is their beloved daughter whom they love from the bottom of their hearts. Joe then drops a bombshell. Joe and Marissa are not Millie's biological parents, explaining they once had a daughter named Lisa who passed away only a few months after her birth. He continues the story, describing how they would visit Lisa's grave late at night to grieve in private, and it was during one of these visits that they discovered a baby lying there, Millie. The reason for the family schism, he explains, was that it was simply too soon after the death of their grandchild for their parents to accept the adoption of another child. As Millie listens, she thinks to herself that she had already pieced together from overheard conversations that she was adopted and that her parents had lost a child, but she never grasped the full weight of it, that their decision to adopt her, a child of no blood relation, was the direct cause of the painful rift with their families. Marissa gently clarifies their hesitancy her desire to have nothing to do with the Rosaretta Trading Company at all. She adds that they simply did not want to endure any more hurtful comments directed at Millie or their family unit. Millie processes this sadly, concluding that if her grandparents were so against her adoption, then they must not think very well of her personally. The realization dawns on her that this is the true reason they've been unable to post job listings or register recipes. They feared the negative reception they would receive at the guild. She looks up and sees the worried and pained expressions on her parents' faces and immediately realizes that her questions have caused them distress. Breaking the heavy silence with a bright smile, Millie declares that it doesn't matter that they aren't her biological parents, as she has known she was adopted from the very start and is nothing but grateful to them for saving her from her terrible original home. With tears in her eyes, she tells them plainly and heartfeltly that she loves them both so much. As Millie starts to make a vow for the future, her parents are overcome with emotion and cry out her name. They rush to her side, embracing her tightly and telling her through their own tears that they love her too. The three of them come together in a deep and meaningful family hug in the middle of their kitchen. Millie closes her eyes, reveling in the profound warmth and love of the embrace. Her parents hold her close, thanking her for accepting them as her family. She pulls back slightly, a happy, tear-streaked smile on her face as she affirms her feelings for them. Filled with a newfound confidence, Millie announces that the matter is settled. They will go to the guild and register the recipes, and she won't mind at all if anyone there speaks badly of her. Joe smiles, agreeing that he doesn't care what anyone says either. Millie then cheekily adds that they need to post job listings quickly too, pointing out that her mother's belly means she won't be able to work for much longer. Her parents burst into laughter, marveling at the sharp and practical mind of their 5-year-old daughter. Millie beams, filled with a powerful resolve to protect not only Nicole's
We can do this!
precious family as well. The day begins with a quiet view of a rooftop against a cloudy sky. Inside a large, formal-looking building, Joe and his daughter Millie sit nervously in a sparsely populated waiting area. Millie senses her father's tension and asks if he is okay, to which he replies with a strained reassurance that he is fine. After their emergency family meeting, they had decided to come to the Merchant Guild first thing in the morning to finally register their recipe and post a job list. Seeing Joe more tense than she ever has before, Millie wonders just how stubborn her maternal grandfather must be and feels a sense of relief that he decided to come along with him. She observes her father's clenched fist, recognizing his nervousness, while Joe internally acknowledges that his father-in-law's dislike of him is something he understands completely. A guild receptionist calls for number 3, and Millie immediately jolts her father into action, telling him to get it together because their turn has arrived. They are led into a
Ding dong, rubber bomb!
Fire in the hole! Laid bare. Wanted my full attention, did you?
Lolling! Eat Papa!
Transfixed! This is where you fall.
Go claw!
Laid bare. Overruled. Everlasting as the moon.
Insisting that something is terribly wrong with the contract. She points to the tiny text, revealing a clause that states all future recipes registered by them will be bound indefinitely to the terms of this single, initial contract. Joe's expression turns to one of shock and anger as he realizes the contract is a trap designed for the guild to seize the majority of their profits. Flustered and sweating, the guild worker stammers that this is simply how the Merchant Guild operates and tries to claim the contract isn't final yet. Millie's eyes narrow as she immediately identifies his blatant deception, knowing with certainty that he is lying. She confronts him directly, asking if the Merchant Guild is staffed by scammers and pointing out that the document is clearly a final contract they intend to enforce once signed. She continues her relentless questioning, accusing him of writing the exploitative contract himself and planning to use their submitted recipe as leverage to trap them. Backing him into a corner, Millie asks the final, damning question: if he is personally pocketing the profits, which causes the worker to snap and scream that she is a little brat. The enraged man lunges across the table and violently grabs Millie by her hair, shouting that she has stepped out of line, prompting a horrified scream of her name from Joe. Without a moment's hesitation, Joe throws a powerful punch that sends the worker flying backwards, yelling at him to stop. The worker stumbles to his feet, vowing that Joe and his inn are finished for assaulting a guild employee as he shouts for the guards to seize him. 2 guards immediately storm the room and grab hold of Joe, who struggles against them and demands to know what they are doing. They wrestle him to the ground, pinning him as he grunts in pain and struggles to get free. The worker orders the guards to apprehend Millie as well but warns them not to touch the documents, calling them evidence, a move Millie recognizes as an attempt to destroy the proof of his fraud. As a guard approaches, Millie clutches the contract and summons a gust of wind to keep him at bay, refusing to let them have the paper. The furious worker commands the guard to retrieve the document from the child at once. Pinned to the floor, Joe roars a warning, telling the guard not to dare lay a hand on his daughter. The guard ignores him, yelling, "Shut up," as he raises a truncheon to strike the defiant father. Millie screams as she is dragged away by another guard, watching in horror as the first guard brings the weapon down hard on her father's head. Her world blurs as she sees her father's hand, dirted from the impact, and she can only whisper his name in terror. Blood trickles from Joe's head as his eyes lose focus and he collapses, unconscious. The worker smirks, remarking that's what they get for causing trouble, before ordering the guards to take the documents from the terrified girl. Time seems to stop for a moment as Millie stares in frozen shock at the scene before her. A strange, powerful energy begins to glow and swirl around her body. The room itself starts to tremble violently as cracks of energy spiderweb through the air. The guards look around in confusion and fear, demanding to know what is happening as the tremors intensify. From the floor, a barely conscious Joe manages to weakly call out his daughter's name. Power erupts from Millie, her hair flying wildly as she lets out a furious scream, demanding to know what they are doing to her dad. The room shakes violently as Millie screams in fury, her father lying injured on the floor while the corrupt guild worker looks on in disbelief. Her voice echoes with raw power as she demands to know what they are doing to her dad. A palpable wave of magical energy bursts forth from the small girl, crackling through the air. The immense pressure overwhelms the guards and the guild worker, who find they can no longer stand as their consciousness begins to fade. The energy intensifies, swirling around Millie as her hair floats freely in the magical vortex. Joe, struggling to stay awake, witnesses his daughter suspended in the air by the chaotic power and wonders what is happening. With his last bit of strength, he whispers her name before finally succumbing to his injuries and collapsing. The magical outburst subsides, leaving behind a scene of utter destruction with shattered windows and cracked walls. In the eerie silence, Millie stands alone in the center of the ruined room, surrounded by the unconscious bodies of her father and their attackers. The camera pans across the devastation, showing the deep fissures in the walls and the wrecked furniture. Reality crashes back in as Millie realizes her anger caused her magic to overflow, and seeing her father hurt because he protected her, she rushes to his side in a panic. As she holds her father, the door to the room is thrown open by an imposing older man who demands to know the cause of the commotion. The man stares in shock at the destroyed room and bodies on the floor, questioning what has happened. He formally introduces himself as Enrique Rosetta, the head of the East District Merchant Guild and the former leader of the Rosetta Trading Company. His sharp eyes scan the unconscious figures on the floor until they land on a familiar face, and he asks if that is Joe's spark lying there. Upon hearing him speak her father's name, Millie's eyes widen with the dawning realization of who this man must be. She understands at once that this must be the very head of the Merchant Guild, her estranged maternal grandfather. Brimming with righteous anger, Millie confronts Enrique directly, accusing him of heading a group of scammers after they were attacked for pointing out a fraudulent contract. Enrique scoffs at the accusation, demanding what kind of nonsense she is spouting and asking if she has any proof. Millie confidently holds up the doctored contract, declaring it's the one his staff gave them and warning him not to touch the crucial evidence. After examining the document, Enrique's fist clenches in fury, and he concedes that while he needs to hear the full story, treating Joe's injuries is the immediate priority. As he takes a step towards Joe, Millie instinctively stands in his way, protectively yelling at him not to touch her dad. Enrique looks down at the tearful but defiant girl, a look of understanding on his face as he realizes she must be Joe's daughter. He softens his tone, reassuring her that he will have a trustworthy person take her father to the medical room for proper treatment. Seeing the state of the room, he tells Millie it's best if she doesn't stay here and invites her to come with him. Sometime later, after Millie has recounted the events, the scene shifts to a different location. Now sitting in a lavish office, Millie looks at Enrique and asks if the people who attacked them will face proper punishment. Enrique looks at her intently, first confirming that her name is indeed Millie. He gestures to the fraudulent contract on his desk and admits that she was right, stating that with such evidence, there is no way for the guild to defend itself from being called scammers. He explains that his employee acted alone, altering the contract without authorization and then assaulting Joe, and he bows his head in a formal, sincere apology for the guild's failure. Millie observes him, noting that he seems to be genuinely acknowledging his subordinate's mistake and is even making sure Joe, a man he dislikes, receives immediate care, leading her to believe he isn't a bad person after all. Now that some time has passed and her initial rage has subsided, Millie feels calm enough to think and speak about the situation properly. She tells Enrique that he doesn't need to apologize, but asks if he could handle the damages to the room quietly, just as he offers to make amends. She then confesses that it was her own magic, which went out of control when she saw her dad get hurt, that destroyed the room, and she apologizes for it. Millie explains that while the shock of the scam was great, she never intended to cause such destruction. With a clever look, she proposes a simple solution. They just call it even, an idea that leaves Enrique momentarily speechless. He looks at her in disbelief, questioning how a mere child could possess enough untamed magic to destroy a room and asking just how much power she has. Millie simply smiles and replies that her power level is a secret. Enrique stares at the little girl, a bead of sweat forming on his brow as he processes her incredible composure and mysterious abilities. After a tense moment, he relents, agreeing to her terms and promising to have someone trustworthy restore the room discreetly. Millie then asks what became of the men she knocked out, thinking to herself that she really needs to be more careful with her power in the future. He informs her that they only lost consciousness and will wake up soon, adding that they got what they deserved, a sentiment that brings a relieved smile to Millie's face. Thanking him, she finalizes their deal. She and her father will keep quiet about the guild scam, and in return, the guild will say nothing about her magic. Enrique sighs, utterly bewildered, and asks aloud if she is truly just a child to be making such shrewd negotiations. As he comments on her surprisingly mature way of speaking, a knock sounds at the office door. An assistant enters to announce that a Miss Marissa Spark has arrived to pick Millie up, at which point Marissa herself steps into view and casually greets her grandfather. Enrique's jaw drops, his composure completely shattered as he stares in utter shock at his estranged granddaughter standing before him. Enrique shows deep concern for his granddaughter Marissa, asking if she is alright after traveling so far in her body condition. He worries that a cramped shared carriage could have harmed her, and as he frets, Millie is shocked to see what looks like a large, fluffy tail wagging behind him, making her wonder what kind of being he is. Marissa happily thanks him as he insists on arranging a private carriage for her return journey, prompting him to remark on how much she is truly loved. Millie internally speculates that her grandfather might just be a tsundere who deeply loves his granddaughter, a thought that contrasts sharply with Marissa's shock and suspicion upon realizing he somehow knew she was pregnant without being told. After a moment, Enrique turns to the door and calls for someone to come in. Joe enters the room with a fresh bandage on his head, and both Millie and Marissa cry out his name in relief and happiness. Marissa rushes to his side, asking if he's okay, and he reassures her that he's fine now, calming her worries. Enrique then stands before Joe and, as the head of the Merchant Guild, offers his sincerest apologies for the incident. Joe accepts the apology and thanks him for the medical treatment, adding that while he was angry, he's ultimately just glad that Millie wasn't hurt in the attack. Enrique promises a more formal apology will be handled later and urges Joe to make sure he properly registers his recipe once things have settled down. Millie reflects on the outcome, feeling relieved that her original goal of registering the recipe is now achievable and realizing the fearsome guildmaster is just a grumpy old softy with whom they can build a good relationship. As the family gets ready to depart, Marissa waves and says a cheerful goodbye to her grandfather. Just as they are leaving, Enrique stops them, offering a box of cookies as a small token of his apology, a sight that stuns Millie, who realizes she has never seen actual sweets in this world before. She eagerly takes a bite of a cookie and is immediately overcome with a feeling of peacefulness and the delicious taste. Lost in the heavenly flavor of generously used butter and sugar, Millie is gently brought back to reality by her mother, who reminds her that the cookies are expensive and should be savored. Beaming, Millie thanks her grandpa and declares that this means they have made up, which causes a flustered Enrique to insist that he is not her grandpa. Despite his protest, he tells them to take care on their way home and adds that they will likely be seeing each other again soon. After they have gone, Enrique stands alone in his office, looking out the window with a melancholic expression as he murmurs that Marissa is already gone. His thoughts turn to Millie, and he marvels at the sheer amount of magical power she must possess to have caused an outburst so powerful it could crack the walls and floors of a room. Ultimately, he decides that as long as his beloved granddaughter Marissa is happy, nothing else truly matters to him. He reflects on the past, remembering that he was never against adopting the child they found, but other members of the Roselta Trading Company were, which created the rift that kept him from his granddaughter for so many years, making their reunion incredibly happy for him. Even with the happy reunion, he grumbles to himself that he still hates Joe Spark, just as Joe himself lets out a sudden sneeze elsewhere in the city. Pondering how the child could have so much magical power, Enrique calls out for someone named Geku.